As the Hollywood movie industry rapidly changes, we have a new bombshell enter the villa, and that's video game movies. Just this year alone, we've had not just a lot of video game movies, video game adaptations, they've done very, very well. You have the Super Mario Brothers movie, which at the time of filming has not been released, but you also have Iron Lung, which did really, really good. I don't know if that was because of the game or because of Markiplier, but Markiplier is a YouTuber that got popular because of gaming, so it's kind of the same community there. Exit 8, which is coming out very, very soon. The Last of Us has been very popular lately. They're making a God of War show. Fallout's been very popular. I'm sure there's a bunch that I'm not mentioning because there's truly just so many that it's insane to bring them up. But it's made me wonder, why just now have video games started popping up and becoming a thing in Hollywood? Well, as I've mentioned in the last two of my previous videos, one about is cinema dying and is movie theater dying, but also just about franchise fare and how franchises are really struggling to hang on, there's one solution to both of these problems, and that's video game franchises, because not only do they target younger Gen Z audiences, which as we discussed in my previous video, take up about 40 to 50% of the US box office right now, but they're also pre-established fan bases, and so it kind of is a win-win situation for a lot of these companies who are trying to find these really cool franchises. But what is the future of a video game adaptation? And don't worry, this is going to be a very positive video, and I'm very excited about the prospect of the future of video game franchises in Hollywood. Because what's interesting to me, genuinely, is that video games are a newer medium than film. Okay, so they are the first time film has adapted something new. You know, for the most part, film was one of the newer things, so they were adapting, you know, old plays and old books and things that, you know, we've seen for a very, very long time. But adapting a video game is something that is inherently new even to the film industry. You know, we've had a couple run-ins before with things like Tomb Raider, Mario, you know, which I think still maybe potentially have their fan bases, I'm not sure. But, you know, we're seeing a proliferation of storylines that I think are really taking off. And I think that the real game changer for this entire situation was that they got good. You know, for a long time, people were trying to make the adaptations and they just couldn't get them to work. But now, they're actually really good. And I think that that's really interesting. Because also, everyone has played a video game no matter what. Okay, whether you played, you know, a Rock Band, or you played just a Nintendo game, or you like to play story-based games, or something like The Last of Us or something, you've probably played a game, I'm assuming, at some point in your life. So there's an untapped potential for everyone to potentially find something that they'd be interested in here. It's not even just like superheroes where it's like, oh, you know, we're going to tap into a very niche fan base about a variety of different things, which comic books at the time weren't. But video games are something that truly, genuinely does have mass appeal to everybody. And I'm going to, throughout this video, make it akin to something like book adaptations. I think that, you know, again, film started when books were very, very popular for many years. And so I think that, you know, starting to adapt books was never something that was new, but I think that it's very similar. You know, it's a sometimes 10, 12-hour story you're adapting, similar to a book, and you're trying to, you know, cut out a lot of the small little details. You know, with the video game, you're playing actual levels, and, you know, you're restarting multiple things over and over again, and there's a lot of like problem solving elements to it that, you know, with film, you're just kind of keeping the story, having that balance. I think it's really interesting. I'm curious to see really how long a lot of video games are when you cut out the gameplay and it's just the story. I would really akin it to book adaptations where it's, you know, you're not going to get all the fine little details, and if you want that, you can still go play the games. You know, they're still going to be out there for you to go get all the fine little details, but a story is going to be kind of an abridged version of it that plays more towards seeing these cool things in live action or adapted or played by this character or something. So I think that that's just really interesting. Also, you have story-based games. You know, again, we're thinking of the typical, you know, Last of Us, God of War, things like that. But there's also things like the Minecraft movie and FNAF, which are games that don't necessarily have a storyline, that are obviously just like game-based. And I think those are the games that everybody's kind of played a little bit of too. So I also think what's interesting is that you get the opportunity to kind of create a storyline with those. I don't really like the storylines we got with Minecraft or FNAF, but I think that there's a lot of potential with those kind of games to kind of create your own story and have a lot of creative liberty to use an IP to make a story that otherwise maybe wouldn't have gotten a lot of attention. I also think that it's really interesting, something to look at with the Minecraft movie that I always thought was interesting. Again, I didn't necessarily love the Minecraft movie, but that a big, huge blockbuster doesn't have to just be an action movie. Minecraft was a comedy, and it made almost $1 billion just because of the IP name alone. And I think that that's really interesting in the age of superhero movies, where something that wasn't even super actiony was getting this expectation put on it that it needed to be this huge, big action blockbuster. You know, now we're looking at stories that can be huge, big blockbusters that are comedies or dramas or horror movies, you know, like FNAF. And so I think that's just like really, really interesting. That was something we saw proliferate a little bit with with superhero movies, seeing something like Joker make $1 billion just because of the comic book IP attached to it, but I think is going to be in abundance when we really hit the peak of video game adaptations. And I don't think game adaptations are gonna go away or be something akin to Westerns or superhero movies. I think that they're here to stay. Like I said, I think that they really are the future, you know, something that's just like book adaptations or a play adaptation or something like that that can just kind of endlessly be continued. And also, you know, as many games as there are and as many gamers as there are, similar to books, every person can't play every game. So there's going to be a game in a market that someone is going to just hear the story entirely through film. And it makes it easier to consume all these different storylines, you know, whereas you might not be able to play the entire game. And that's kind of what film was for. It's a very easily consumable art form that kind of meshes all the art forms together, but is something that also can have a lot of mainstream appeal. Also, in the age of streaming, you know, where you have 8 to 9 hour full movie production budget television shows, I think that that's also a really interesting thing to look at through the lens of video games as well. You know, like God of War is getting a television show, same with Fallout, you know, whereas it's like, is it really that different at a certain point when the storylines are the same length? You know, if it's a 10-hour live action show or a 10-hour game, I think a lot of people would honestly choose the game, because why not have the interactive element? I think a lot of people are only going to watch video game movies if it's almost an abridged version of the storyline. I think that that's the appeal just with any film adaptation. But yeah, I think that there's just still a lot of really interesting things to think about or to be done there. And also, video games not only just have a lot of community, just like as a whole, just like the mainstream community of video games, but also a lot of games are multiplayer. Like everyone kind of has like a game or something they play with like one specific person. And so it creates this community element in an age where Gen Z is particularly going to movies with, you know, very small groups of people to potentially create a big, huge group movie going experience. And I think that that's how you get things like Minecraft, especially because Gen Z is so online and so on social media that you're getting like so much just free publicity and so much talking about this. And when you have big groups of people going to movies, not only does it feel like a party, it feels like everybody needs to go, and you do end up getting things like Chicken Jockey and stuff like that, which is so dumb for me to have just said out loud on my YouTube channel in 2026. But it was relevant, oddly enough, so here we are. But make no mistake too, while video games are going to particularly target the younger Gen Z demographic, like I said, everyone has a game that they play. So everyone of all ages, of all demographics, will have something that they can take from this, and something that can be created for their demographic as well, just within the same video game sphere. So that's why I think it's a little bit different than superhero movies. So yeah, I'm really curious to see where the whole video game adaptation things go. I'm really excited about it. I wanted to make a very positive video about something that I was really kind of looking forward to, and I thought had a lot of potential within the industry, and I think video game movies are really interesting. But like I said, yeah, I'm very excited about the future of video game movies. Let me know what you thought down below. Thank you so much for watching this video. As always, you're all amazing, and peace out.